Welcome to the New Wealth Wave podcast hosted by Dr. Joaquin Wallace. We're diving deep into the intricate layers of the 7-stage generational wealth model to offer invaluable insights on legacy building, wealth accumulation and preservation, and financial growth across generations. I'm Dr. Joaquin Wallace, and this is the New Wealth Wave podcast. Hey, future wealth builders, welcome to another episode of the New Wealth Wave podcast. I am your host, Dr. Joaquin Wallace, and today our focus will be on stage 4 of my 7-stage generational wealth model. And to help lead the discussion will be Dr. Preston D, who is a financial harmony expert, educator, and author of The Wealth of the Key of Life and the CEO of Concurrent Wealth Management, and also the director of the financial planning program at UW Green Bay, and has over 18 years of experience in this financial space. Dr. Cherry, welcome to the studio, my man.
Oh, Dr. Wallace, thank you so much. Overdue, but right on time.
Exactly. I mean, we've been trying to do this for close to a year now. You know, you're a busy man. I'm watching you on TV, whatnot. I'm following you on Instagram, Twitter, the whole nine. I see that you chimed in when the Bills lost as well. It's all good. It's all fun. So if this is your first time tapping into the New Wealth Wave podcast, it is based on my 7-stage generational wealth model. The model focuses on 3 phases: the past, the present, and the future, broken down into 7 stages. So stage 1 is our internal and external ecosystem, walls in and walls out. It sets the foundation for our financial journey. Stage 2, financial genetic code, where we focus on our financial traumas and anxieties. Both are byproducts of stage 1. Both of these stages are related to our past as well. Stage 3, financial healing. This is where we begin the healing process, reprogramming our financial genetic code, which is a byproduct of both stages 1 and 2. Stage 4, financial edification. This is where we focus on both financial literacy and financial inclusion. And today, Dr. Cherry will focus on stage 4, some 5, some 6, some 2, some 1. He said, I got carte blanche, so we're going to go all over the place with him. And stage 5 is financial well-being. We all want to achieve this, Dr. Cherry. We don't want to outlive our income. And as you know, financial health equals financial wealth. In stage 6, I just seen you on Instagram. I seen you on LinkedIn talking about estate planning. It's so important because this stage here is all about transferring knowledge as well as assets to create our financial footprints, which leads us to stage 7, generational wealth. Now, stages 5, 6, and 7 can be regarded as our future. However, depending on where your entry point is on the model, as they say, 10 toes down, that's where your present is at that particular time. So, Dr. Cherry, you had a chance to review the model. What was your initial thoughts?
I love it a lot, actually. Brother from another mother, I guess, even though, music bridges generations, I think we're on the same chord, I think, Dr. Wallace, man, because we both have wheels in our philosophy, and your wheel is magic. It really is. It starts with the mirror. And we'll get into that later, but I just like seeing that when you get into the mirror, you got to start admitting first. When it started off there, I was like, oh man, this is like a game of life. It's at the start point right there. That's one of the best wheels I've ever seen. And going past, present, and future and linking it all together as a continuum and a wholeness of life. There's just so much. And I know we'll unpack, but that we're spot on.
When I read your book, you sent me a copy of it, and I seen you had a wheel. We both was on the same page with the wheel because we understand that financial literacy is not linear. It's a continuum process. And I'm going to get into this later on, but I think that's where the ball is dropped in the financial literacy space, because in the financial planning space as well, we don't look at it. We look at it as a linear process versus it is not a linear process. So before we get into the heavy lifting, because you said I got carte blanche, so we're going to get into it. I mean, you ready? I mean,
you got it.
You need to get ready, my man. Okay. All right. So before we get into the heavy lifting, tell us a fun fact about yourself.
Fun fact, I've been writing poetry for 30 years, and I'm in my late 40s. I'm in that part of my 40s where everything is starting to break down. I didn't know it. But then, the poetry, it's kicked off the writing. So I started writing when I was a teenager. And to be able to sit down and really go up a level, from the free writing of free expression of poetry and then come to something more confined, it was a joy. So yes, the poetry and my album collection came from my dad. I got that when I graduated my master's degree in 2006. He gave it to me. If we have some time, I'll tell you the story, but he gave it to me then. There's actually a baby picture of me next to the album collection that he gave me, and then I expanded it. So those are 2 things.
I seen you in Barnes & Noble with your son, and I was like, wow, obviously that was a proud moment for you, right? to be in that situation, to see your book displayed and to share that moment with him and your wife. I mean, I'm sure that's something that you'll cherish for the rest of your life because, again, I mean, it starts there. We talk about generational wealth. You're passing down knowledge. The times I've watched you on TV and things of that nature. I mean, you're a go-to guy. You know, we're going to get to that later on, why that's so important for someone to represent within the marginalized communities.
I appreciate it. Yeah. And thank you for mentioning that special moment, Dr. Wallace. It's a full circle moment. I got more years to come. I said, I've always been somebody's son, but I've never been somebody's father. And my parents have been married 46 years. So having them around for my sister and I for so many years, and then to come full circle and my wife and I having my son there, I was, starting off the generational wealth of knowledge and a little bit of money too, right? To see that full circle and to have so many more days to go is truly a joy and a blessing.
Well, I think that the key is oftentimes and not, we don't see individuals that look like us in a position to communicate. And that's why when I first seen you and started following you last year, when I started getting really into this space, I was like, this is a brother I got to know because what you're doing. And Michael Thomas came on and I was like, do you know this guy?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That Brother Thomas is all that. Dr. Thomas is all that. He's
Right,
been on my
right.
show too. And I would loved it when you had him on. I listened to the episode. It was so much to unpack there. It was such a joy to hear both of you exchange like that.
Oh, man, I told him that he needs to come out here and we're going to go to the beach and things of that nature. I mean, he's a heavyweight in the business as well, but I'm aligning myself with people like you and him because we're out there, but we're not really together, so to speak. And I think these type of platforms allow us to get together and communicate, to get to know one another. I see you on the street. Now you see me or not. We have a relationship. So I appreciate that. I got a 3-part question. This kind of sets the tone for the podcast itself. So before you became who you are today, where were you at on the model?
Multiple times in my life, right at number one. Stage one. I know that may be cliche because it's number one. It starts with the self. Here, my parents, I talk about them a lot. And I've been very blessed to have parents in my life for so long. We grew up together. Dad was 21, my mother was 18. They were discovering themselves and they were trying to empower the next generation from where they were from and make conscious decisions. So they made a conscious and intentional decision to instill self-worth and self-value into their children. I say all the time that no one is self-made. Matter of fact, it's the first sentence of the book. No one is self-made because somebody did something for you. Now, when people talk about self-made, they're talking about not receiving the inheritance. We'll talk about that later. But when we talk about wealth, what type of generational wealth did you inherit or get transferred to you? And for me, it was self-worth, self-value, your two most compoundable assets that you can use to elevate yourself or repair yourself because you have a foundational mechanism. And so many times, Dr. Wallace, I had to get back into the mirror and do an audit, what I call an honest self-audit. And hey, the mirror could be an expensive tax or an empowering audit. It could tax you though. So number one, multiple times in life.
So with that being said, what was your aha moment that you knew change was imminent?
My aha moment, and I like to say too, because it reminds me of Oprah Winfrey. She was like, right? And my aha moment was 2016. And 2016, I figured out what I did not want to do anymore on multiple aspects. And I did figure out what I did want to do and how much I'm leaving on the table in life. Was I maximizing like God-given abilities and stuff that I worked for and what was transferred in me? What was I doing with that every day? And in 2016, it all come together. It's like, this is it. Dr. Wallace, it was it. If it wasn't that, it was in the ground. It was either one. And I was like, I got to do something. And so this is why I just started thinking about an aspirational life. I always have thinking about an aspirational life, but to boldly say and state and write it out, what's next and what I want to do, particularly my finances and my life, it was written down. So I had my aha moment in 2016. That audit that I talk about, the HSA, admit where you are, acknowledge how you feel about it so you can clear the palate. That way you can take action. It was one of the greatest ones. And then couple months later, I ended up going to PhD school for financial planning. I met my wife and passed the CFP all in a matter of 6 months.
Well, that's a Herculean effort because the CFP is a beast in itself. So currently, where are you at right now on the model?
I'm on stage 5 and 6. And 6 is generational knowledge. I'm not totally financially free yet. I tell a lot of people, I say, listen, you'll know when I'm financially free. You'll know that. They be like, well, you going to call us up? I said, nope, the complete opposite. If you ain't heard from Brother Cherry in a little bit, they be like, hey, man, he done made it right there. But I got my finances in order to where I appreciate them. I value them. I'm comfortable. I have time affluence. I have choice affluence, flexibility. So I really appreciate my finances right now. I just want to keep them going because I know, hey, look, been broke multiple times too. either through external forces or internal forces or a combination thereof. So I know what that feels like. And we talk about financial wellness and well-being, right? Feeling secure and feeling confident in managing your life and money so you can achieve what you will want. And right now I feel that way. Now we're going over to stage 6, which was that generational, when we just spoke about transferring that self-value, self-worth into the next generation, which I received. Well, my wife and I are passing that on to our son. And then number 2, we're a little bit more financially ahead than our parents. And so now we're also transferring the finances.
We're going to get into this. I mean, this is going to be a heavy discussion again. I appreciate you coming on. Future Wealth Builders, find us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, and all the major social media platforms. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Dr. Preston D. Cherry, financial harmony expert. I love that. Educator and author of Wealth in the Key of Life. We're going to get into our first set of questions for you. So, Dr. Cherry, bridging the gap in financial literacy. So, financial literacy is often considered an afterthought in our education system. What key financial principles should be taught early to bridge the financial instability and security gap?
Thank you for pointing that out too, because so often financial literacy, and you know this, I read all your stuff and you're an expert. Financial literacy is informed decisions and habits and attitudes about your money. And the key word there is informed. And so often the reason why there's a pushback on financial literacy because it is being measured at the wrong place. I don't have a problem with the word financial literacy. It's informed decisions and behaviors. That is correct. What's before that? Before that is, and I'm getting to your question about what should be talked about, is financial compassion, then financial education, then financial literacy, and then you have financial wellness as an arc. And so you have to open up the heart to get to the mind. Has to be a system, an advisor, a coach, or even yourself to offer yourself up some financial compassion and understanding. Who are you? What are you all about? What's your unique footprint or thumbprint? Attitudes, culture, experiences, all of that, beliefs, what you've been through. Who are you? And if someone takes the time, you and yourself decide to understand oneself, and then you can go on to that financial education, which we're getting all the information, then you can get to the literacy, informed behavior, so on and so forth. So the reason why I went there is money talks in the home are essential. So now there doesn't have to be one thing, but that money talks is comprehensive. It's a fancy word is a financial socialization, right? And my dad, he said, well, you went to school with the PhD to learn all them big words? That ain't nothing but a chop up. That ain't nothing but a chop up, So all that long way around to say, because it's all essential. Money talks started, my wheel, where you're talking about. I'm talking about both of our wheels, but I'm talking about the wheel of life and money. It started in the home, understanding emotions during challenging times, uplifting and celebrating milestones, and talking about what's going on, the dollars and cents with an S. What is going on, the ebbs and flows? We had those talks, Dr. Wallace, and still to this day, there are some things that I've carried forward and practiced because of the money talks that we had in our home, and they've carried forward ever since.
That's interesting because in stage 1 of the model, we talk about internal and external ecosystem. Internal is walls in. In that conversation that you're speaking about, the culture, the learned behaviors, the self-sabotage, the learned helplessness, all of that is a byproduct of that because walls in, we don't communicate that. So what happens? We go outside the door externally. This is what we see. This is what we think success looks like. Then we have the systemic issues that we have to deal with as well. So we're always battling, so to speak, because we don't have that base, that foundation in the home early enough. So we know how to navigate those issues and concerns. And that's why we're saying the same thing, is that financial literacy is a great term to use, but it's misused. It's not spoke out in the right way because before we get to financial literacy, listen, I got to know, where'd you grow up? What was that conversation at the house like? What was your environment? Because financial literacy can be financial shaming at the same time because it's a cookie cutter. So this is what it's supposed to be like. But, your circumstances may be totally different from the next person's circumstances. So that's my concern with it. That's my issue with the term financial literacy. And we see it with the fin influencers and things of that nature. They're constantly talking about it. Financial literacy. And we know, no.
I don't know what the heck they talk about.
No, they don't even know what they're talking about, but they're getting paid to talk about it, right? But a person like you and I, who has the credentials, like, well, you're too serious. We need to get to a place where we believe that it makes sense. Totally. Don't get me started.
Yeah, don't get me started on that. Like the wealth gap.
Yeah, right. I mean, come on, let's be for real.
Yeah,
Let's be for real. So, financial inclusion and systemic barriers. Many communities face systemic barriers that limit access to wealth building tools like credit, investment, and home ownership. From your perspective, what are the biggest obstacles to financial inclusion, and how can we dismantle them?
Speaking of the wealth gap, let's go ahead and get on that right quick.
Okay, well, let's get to it. You said
Well,
I got carte blanche. Let's do
right,
this.
carte blanche. It goes to the question about inclusivity. We're going through some challenging times right now with misinformation. And when I read, exclusion meant one thing and inclusion meant another. I don't know. That's just from my own basic reading, because reading is fundamental. And when we talk about inclusion in the challenging times that we have right now, folks just want access across the board evenly, and then they'll take it from there. It's simply not wanting to be oppressed, and also to be included fairly into the system and the choice-making mechanisms and the equity of society. And that's it. No more, no less. And inclusion means not to exclude. And so that said, a lot of folks are being excluded. Particularly, people like to say all folks or people of color. Hey, we starting with Black folks, all right? That's number one. Because I said, when they talked about the Constitution right there, and when they wrote it down, I think it was just white folk, Indians, and Black folk. I mean, so when we talk about people of color, I'm like, well, who are you talking about? Anyway, that's the whole thing. But when we talk about the systematic barriers, wealth gap, it was created institutionally, and it will have to be fixed and closed institutionally and systematically, period. Individuals will not close the wealth gap, and particularly the ones that have been oppressed and targeted to create the wealth gap. So all this talk about barriers to wealth and all this, it's not too much to the individuals, because just history, again, reading is fundamental. When you have the Tulsas of the world, the Black Wall Streets and towns in Florida and all over the country, I'm not sure if they had to be taught economics or literacy. We've already had that. And so the folks that are still suffering, and now it's more classism than anything, it's a shame still that we're still talking about where do we go from here? The central question that Dr. Martin Luther King asked, and he asked that in 68. So what do we do about it? We can control what we can control, Dr. Wallace. And although the institutions have gotten better over the years, there's still a wide disadvantage to some folks. So my dad always said, he's still alive, he said, listen, put your blinders on, son. Put your blinders on. So you want to be looking to left or right, control what you can control and focus on the people that matter. And so the resources that you do have, use them on the individual household level and get your house in order. That's all you can really do. And live in testimony, Dr. Wallace, which is there's certain things that you can't do about the broader system. And it's actually wasted energy to go up against that. So save your energy to focus on what you can control and go on about that business, because the last 400 and some odd years, that ain't never going to change. But next year can change for you.
I love that next year can change for you. Today can change for you. It's all about mindset. I love that. One thing that I love about how you're able to articulate, because you can go on all sides. And one of the biggest things that I've learned in this whole process is the introduction of how behavioral finance is interjected into this, but not spoken about enough. And so with that being said, the role of behavioral finance and financial literacy, we know financial literacy isn't about knowing the numbers. It's about behavior. How do you see behavioral finance playing a role in financial education? And how can people reprogram their financial mindset to achieve true financial empowerment?
Yes, I want folks to realize too. I mean, I know we've just in the last segment, we talked about people of color, Black folk, and all this other stuff. Money is human. Let's chop this up too. It's like those low income people, or anything after you want to put after those, those low income people, those Blacks or those whatever, No, money is human. So I call it the humanity of money. So everyone either has a dollar that folds or coins that jingle in their pocket. And everyone has a relationship to money, past, present, and future, just like your will, right? And so what are people's stories? There's stories in financial statements. Your stories are in your financial statements. And if people don't want to believe me, go ahead, print off 3 months to a year of your statements and go through there with no shame or judgment. I've been through it multiple times. I eat my own cooking. Matter of fact, I got mine with one of the worst stages of my life. I got it right here as a reminder, right? To say that there were stories in my statements. And so what are your stories? And that is, I call that the humanity of money, because we all carry that around. So it is having the courage, Dr. Wallace, to look oneself in the mirror, have no shame, have no judgment. I notice are overused words these days, but resiliency to work yourself through and to, the next stage. And some of these words sometimes make sound cliche, but it is starting. It's starting at that number one and asking oneself to give yourself permission to forgive oneself of where you don't think you are on any part of the social economic status. Because there's a big myth that rich folks talk all the time, oh, I don't need all that soft stuff. I don't need the feelings. Let's get right to the information or the numbers about the finances. Let's get to the strategies. I'm like, hold up. I'll close with this. I had this older gentleman. He was like 80 some odd years old. I gave a talk. We were in the South too. That's SOUF. That was one of the South. And he said, son, I've never heard anybody talk about money like that before. And I said, well, thank you. I appreciate it. He said, I don't have a problem with money. We got blue blood money. He said, but I cannot talk about it with my family is because I'm afraid that those talks take it into a bigger level of discontent. So when you talk about where folks are with their money, it doesn't matter how much money you have, because the relationship with money, the mindset with money, the experience with money, attitudes, culture, all of that, everyone has.
I want to kind of stay on that tangent there because, I mean, that's so true. We both meet with clients, high six-figure earners as well. And oftentimes than not, a lot of their ability to move forward is caught up in their behavior with money. My theory is, in terms of 401ks, qualified plans at work, I firmly believe that a large portions of individuals who participate in those do not fully participate in those because they don't understand them. And a lot of it is based on their internal and external ecosystem. What they've learned, why would I give you 10%? Because I need that 1,000. We're just going to use 1,000 as a number. If I do 10%, I'm getting taxed on $900 versus $1,000, right? But in the scarcity of resources, I need all of my money. But that's a byproduct of what they've grown up in, with their environment, that learned helplessness, self-sabotage, the loss aversion, so to speak. When we put more accent on the losing money versus gaining money, right? You know what I mean? So prospect theory, so to speak. So, when you look at it from that perspective, I love what you're saying. What's the pushback when you meet with clients? Because you meet with a wide range of clients. I mean, what's some of the pushback that you hear when you start speaking about behavioral finance?
Yeah, people just want to, hey, man, when are you going to get to recommending me something? Yeah. That said, once we go through the process, folks were like, I can see it now. Because what I share with them, Dr. Wallace, I tell them, I said, listen, I can't guarantee investment returns. I can't guarantee certain that you won't have enough. I can't guarantee any of that. What I can guarantee is that your life and your money will be aligned now to and through retirement all these years, because the discovery process, you will greatly understand the financial strategies. Once you do the feelings of money, you'll understand the financial strategies of money. And I share with them also, you'll have more motivation and understanding and willingness to transform, to commit, and let those emotions and finances compound over time. It's that stick-to-itiveness. I tell people all the time, I'm like, look, I'm Gen X. And when we used to have, they didn't cut a lot of stuff out of the schoolhouses nowadays, right? They didn't cut the climate of the rope, home economics, all this stuff. And what they did, well, we used to have construction paper back in the day. We do the little projects. And you put the Elmer's glue up on there. And if you put too much, it just slide around. It don't stick. And that's just how it is. If you have disconnect with the understanding, right, the feelings of finances, then you're not going to stick towards the numbers of finances. So sometimes I get pushed back, but I'm like, listen, I guarantee you will want to do this. And when you do, you'll be like, oh, so that's why we did the Roth conversion, or that's why we opened up this trust, or you're advising me against borrowing against my portfolio. First of all, you got nothing to borrow from sometimes, right? If you do have something to borrow from, you shouldn't be borrowing from, right? Even if people have $1 million or $2. Just that, getting a bridge loan off of your portfolio. If you have a better understanding of why, who, when, where, past, present, future, then me recommending that to you or not will make a lot more sense as far as your overall aspirations of what you want to do.
Well, yeah, I know that you're from the South because you said a term that you let slip out that my dad used to tell me. My mom and dad is from Texas, and they used to call the school a schoolhouse. You let that slip. And so I remember my parents used to always say, what's going on up at that schoolhouse? I need to come up to the schoolhouse, right? So I know you from the South. They're from Texas, sure. So I know you are.
So for sure. The schoolhouse, boy. You don't want nobody going to the schoolhouse, boy. I said, you want me to call your dad or mom so you could go home for school? No.
No. I tell you what, that was all bad when they mentioned going up to the schoolhouse. Trust on that one.
Right.
So, building a financial inclusive future. If we're talking about real lasting financial empowerment, what are 3 actionable items that individuals, financial institutions, and policymakers can make to create more financial inclusive future? Just 3.
I really enjoy, particularly the Secure Act 2.0. Secure Act 2.0 elevated these, which are automatic enrollments. Automatic enrollments are essential. They circumvent the behaviors, financial behavior, the money psychology, the financial therapy aspects. All the emotion of money gets pivoted around once you automatically enroll someone and then have them have to make a choice to opt out. And then also automating. And I would even go a step further into placing someone into a target date fund. Some plans do. I'm a big fan of that. That way you can go back in and say, I don't want to participate. I need some money. Now, matter of fact, it's only a little, I wouldn't say a little bit. They're not taking your salary or anything. There's so many myths out there. There's like, people are locking up my money or whatever this is, right? There's plenty of studies that show about what automation does. Automating your finances, even if it's $10 to a savings account. So I like automatic enrollment at your place of business, at your employer plan. Let's keep on with automation because this is across the board, no matter your socioeconomic status. You can start with $10, $10,000, whatever it is. Life and money alignments give your money assignments. And once your money has an assignment, automate that bad boy. Because what's left over, it gives you the freedom and flexibility to do it the heck what you want. You don't have to explain certain things. You don't have to justify it to you or external folks. So automate that money to that, I call it event readiness funds instead of emergency funds. If you're always ready, you never have to get ready, right? If you stay ready, you never get ready. So that money goes here, that money goes here, money goes here, money goes here. Now you're taking the brain out of it. It just goes. So automatic enrollment and then automating after that as far as your finances. And number 3, I think revisiting finances, pen to paper. That's called journaling, right? Don't sit up at the microphone and get a dictaphone and all that other stuff and Google AI and all that type of stuff. I need you to go ahead, get you a pen, right? And some blank paper and go through and you can look at your financial plan and your numbers on the computer and all that. But ask yourself the last 6 months, the last 12 months, what is something that I didn't feel well about and I want a better outcome? And then go research what would have made it better, all right? That outcome and knowing that better outcome, I like that outcome better. Now, ask yourself what those emotions felt like then and now, compare it to what you want to feel like later, and then what are you going to do? And that writing, Dr. Wallace, pen to paper, old school. Matter of fact, I'd give a lot more people a check register if I could. Right. But yes, writing. So those 3 things, automatic enrollment, automation of finances, and reviewing with pen and paper.
That's a novel idea. Do people actually write pen to paper now? I mean, do they? I mean, I do. I can't understand my own writing half the time, but I actually do write pen to paper. And I'd be like, what does that say again? I got to go back through and look really hard at what I've been writing.
Right. That's right. Yeah. That's right. I mean, they got these with the fancy things now that you could, I forgot what the remarkables and all of that stuff, but just write yourself a few sentences, a yellow pad, old school yellow pad. And you can do a checklist. This didn't go right for me. It doesn't have to be Langston Hughes or or somebody like that. See, I got you on that, but you don't have to be a writer from the Harlem Renaissance to sit there and write a whole full sheet of paper. You can say, okay, I've got 20,000 in this account. We did not do well with some of our money. Well, our goal was 50,000. Well, we came up short. I didn't feel good about that. I feel less on path with our life and finances. What am I going to do about it? Why did I do something like that? And then you don't have people putting shame or judgment on you from the external side. You know what writing does? Writing allows you to have solitude, and it's not loneliness. It's solitude. It's reflection. It's mindfulness. Shout out to Dr. Sandra Davis with the mindfulness. It allows you to reflect all of that. And then when you see it and then you let that energy transfer through your body to the pen, to the paper, and you get to read it and reflect on it, then it is more powerful. It is more powerful once you put that intentionality on it.
I love how you brought up Sandra. I mean, she was on in our first year. She's the director of financial planning at Golden Gate University, where I work under her. I mean, her episode was fire. I mean, she's a whole different level, man. I mean, she's great. She's a great spokesman for what we're trying to accomplish as well. Before I forget, I wanted to ask you this question. Your live segments, what prompted the live segment? You keep it real on the live segments. Tell me about that one. What prompted that?
I wanted an outlet to get the no BS out there and be able to just speak with everyone how you would speak in the living room or in the place of business, wherever it may be. Just have a talk. I just curse a little bit on the show, all that type of stuff. That's what I want to give. That's that entertainment, an edutainment platform. I can just be a lot more freer. Folks talking to the water cooler, they talking while they're doing whatever. Let's talk about that. Let's break it down like for real. Also education, it's just not something that they're just bantering. You get these athletes, they tell the same story like 100 times on 100 different podcasts. You remember Barkley did this and remember all that? I said, yeah, you said that already. But we are talking in a way that people could connect to and say, yeah, me too. I've been through that. I've been thinking the same thing. And then also delivering some information about that. Speaking of, I think I'm going to do the show on NVIDIA this weekend. And I'm like, wait, stop talking about NVIDIA. Because it goes back to automation and dollar cost averaging over time. Nobody knew who the hell NVIDIA was going to be before COVID, So don't tell me that you did. Right. And now it's still negative for this year. I said, well, we're all NVIDIA people out of it. So now we got the reports out. They beat earnings and everything like that. And then it's like, oh, well, why is it negative? It's called fundamentals. What are we doing? At some point, it's going to top out and trade in a range for somebody. You just DCA. That's one of the shows I'm talking about right there. It's like, we talking about NVIDIA too much. What about the other 499 stocks that are in the S&P 500? What are we doing? So that's the type of thing that I'm talking about.
No, that's great, man. I mean, because you use a lot of colorful words, but you keeping it real. You need to bring me on there one day. We definitely keep it real.
Okay, that's what's up. That's what's up. I tell people all the time, listen, cursing is a form of cheap therapy.
Absolutely.
That keep me from having paying by the hour, right? Drop a couple MFs on there and be like, yeah, you know what? That was about an hour's worth of therapy with that one word.
That's right. Future Wealth Builders, find us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, and all the major media platforms. Today, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Preston D. Cherry, founder and CEO of Concurrent Wealth Management and director of the financial planning program at UW Green Bay. So, next set of questions for you. Unlocking the key message. So, Dr. Cherry, your book offers a powerful perspective on financial empowerment. If there was one major takeaway you want listeners to walk away with, what would it be, and why is it so important in today's financial climate?
One is that you do not have to starve yourself now to feed your later. You do not have to engage in deprivation frugality in order to be financially successful. You don't have to drive a bucket. If it's part of your plan, advising folks is you got a permission to prosper. You got your person, who are your identity, and all those things we're talking about, attitudes, experiences, all that type of stuff. Who the person is. You have your purpose, was that meaning inside of there, right? What's your motivation? You have the points in life, which is life cycle stages, and you have your preferences. It would be materials, it can be philosophy, philanthropy, it could be whatever, spiritual, material, whatever it can be. And then you have to have your plan. Those are the 5 Ps. If it's within your plan, then when folks say, oh, well, you have to live below your means. I said, well, for what for? It's within your means. Those are 2 different things, right? And my means mean differently than your means. So you keep your hand out of my pocket. And that goes for everybody. I said MYOB, I even throw MF in there, because if you have those 5 Ps, Dr. Wallace, some people prefer the difference that, they want a lifestyle creep a little bit. And that's okay, because you're investing into your well-being. And you can secure your retirement and have a good lifestyle now. It just takes intentionality and discovering what you value, what's going to make you less worrisome, less anxiety, feel more well holistically. What is all of that? And then when you figure that out, you understand that you don't have to deprive oneself nor explain to anybody else. The only thing you have to explain to you is your spouse, your God, how you define it, and that's it. Other than that, you don't even have to explain it to yourself if you've already done the work. So that's my one.
Well, you know what? Now, I want you to hold on to that, because I got a question on that in regards to giving people permission, because that is huge. I mean, I think that's something that you talked about when it goes back to money avoidance. You're talking about the money script, so to speak, right? And that's one of them, money avoidance. The money is the root of all evil. Well, I always say, when people say the money is the root of all evil, it's the people that don't have the money. That's my theory on that, right? Yeah, because you don't have it, but it's not the root of all evil. Money is an opportunity, and it's the way you utilize it. So, I mean, definitely, I want to come back to that, because that is huge. That's a huge piece of what we both saying. I think, like I said, man, we were both writing at the same time, bro.
I feel like I'm in the old movie, The Time Cop. Remember Time Cop?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at as well, too. So here's one for you. We talked about the book. Tell me the significance of the title, because the title says a lot. When I first seen the title, I remember when you was talking about it last year, the first thing that came to my mind, he's a Stevie Wonder fan. I mean, that's the first thing that came to my mind. I mean, he loves Stevie Wonder. That's my first perception of the title of it all. I see you love music. I love music as well. You talked about how your dad introduced you to music. My dad did the same thing. I remember listening to the Spinners when I was growing up. But we used to listen to music for hours upon hours. I played music. I toured as a musician. So I get it. I mean, it's great. But what's the significance and the meaning of the title?
Right. So appreciate that. Here, first of all, right right there. I got the album right above me. Music has just been a large part of my life, still is. It speaks to me. That's where I got my writing from. I've done some songwriting before and all that. And I told you a story about the album collection. And words just mean a lot. Words and music, putting them together. When you have well-rounded artists and producers that are just in another realm of humanity, Quincy Jones. So I speak about him in the book. Stevie Wonder, Michael Jackson, all these great writers. What is music and money and language and feeling? All these are humanistic traits. We can speak to them, even if we don't speak the same dialect. We still understand language. We still understand music, right? And so one of the greatest albums of all time is Songs in the Key of Life. And one critique writer said, you know what? Songs in the Key of Life is not linear. It goes all over, from anger to sadness to love to the journey of life to society. It ebbs and flows, and it connects with every embodiment of your being. You place the needle down on that record and you don't need to do nothing else but flip that bad boy and put the needle back down. And this first song is Love's in Need of Love Today. A talk with God. Isn't she lovely? Oh, come on now. It knocks me off my feet. And then the ghetto song, right? Having a life in the ghetto. These are all human constructs. And so this is the same thing I wanted to do with the book, was to say that money, life and money, their alignment and their journey through, everyone can understand. And as Mr. Jones said, rest his soul, he said, everybody has 12 notes, the same 12 notes. What are you going to do with them? Make your song. What is your songbook? And so from that perspective of what Mr. Jones said and Mr. Wonder about this album, I was like, how can I connect the humanity of money and communicate that through the continuum of life? And I always say, advancing the human condition through life or financial advice and financial education. How can I communicate that in a worldwide conversation of humanity? And that's why I wrote the book. That's why I named the book as such.
I love how music doesn't matter in terms of language. So I'm gonna give you a story. A couple of years ago, we was in Paris, and I love jazz. I always wanted to go to a jazz club. So we're walking in the streets of Paris, and it was a gentleman that was putting up some flyers in front of his jazz club. And I asked him, I said, hey, about this club, was the music good? And he spoke English. He said, yeah, it's great. I said, he's just kind of going on and on. And I said, so why are you so confident? He said, because I'm in the group. I said, oh, okay. All right. So you say you should come check us out. I said, okay, cool. So me and my wife, we went in. It was a 3-piece. He's the only one that spoke English. The rest of his band members spoke French. And they broke out Knocks Me Off My Feet by Stevie Wonder and a bunch of other songs. And it was interesting because people knew the lyrics to the song, right? But we're in a different country and everybody's moving and grooving, whatnot. I mean, they were just electric. They had a guy playing xylophone. We had a horn guy, a drummer, and he played organ, didn't have a bass. And this dude was wicked because he didn't have a bass and he was incredible playing the organ, running the bass pedals and whatnot. It sounded like a 6-piece band. And it was incredible, but you can see how this music has no language. It does not have a language. And I love that. And another reason why I love music, I'm into the songwriting piece of it as well. To me, I listen to the lyrics versus the rhythm section, because to me, it tells a story. A song that tells a story is so much more powerful. You have the backbeat, if you will. So you mentioned Quincy, Prince, all these guys, Michael Jackson, Burt Bacharach, Carole King, you start giving, come on now. I can get going now on riots now.
Hey, I'm just here and taking notes. I'm connected.
So, I get it. And I love how you kind of utilize that, your love in the book as well, in a language that we can all understand. So definitely I appreciate that. So the urgency of retirement planning with shifting economic landscapes, costs are rising, inflation, increased life expectancies, retirement planning has never been more critical today. Why do you believe so many people underestimate this? And what's your advice for those who feel behind?
First of all, forgive yourself, because life is going to life. There's one thing about uncertainty that is certain, and you're going to have to make some adjustments and ebb and flow. And what my mom and dad like to say, and it still does, hey, you're going to have to roll and adapt. You're going to have to roll and adapt. So speaking of my parents, they've shared their story in my podcast a couple times, and they wanted to retire at 50. And it just didn't happen. And that took a couple of years in order to work that out, acknowledge how you're feeling about that, get over that, and they weren't sitting around depressed or anything. That's okay if they were, but they were like, man, we want to get to getting on, right? And they started acknowledging and affirming what they have accomplished in life, right? How did they get there? Why are they there? And how far they've come. And then also how short the next 8 or 9 years is going to be, and they were like, it's all good to have 2 young adults, they got them in school, they got houses, they got children, they're healthy, they have, confidence about themselves, all that. They were like, you know what? We had back then, it was like 35 years in marriage, right? And now it's 46. They're like, we good. All right, let's go on and continue this thing. So if you're feeling not confident about your finances, affirm yourself, forgive yourself. And then what you going to do about it? What's next, right? And then get into the getting on. So you could take action and say, okay, it wasn't 50, but let's make it 62. If it's not 62, let's make it 65, but let's make it happen. When you work through that emotional state, it gives your finances direction and connection. And then it just feels better. I always say that you don't know what it is until you've gotten through it. Now, Grammarly doesn't like the word this or it because it says undefined, right? But it is defined when you go through it.
Absolutely. Grandma don't have the final answer, but that's true though.
Right? So you know what that feels like. So forgive oneself and then get to committing. Well, have that audit. Don't be too harsh on yourself if life just took you through there. But if it's something you said, the internal, external walls, if it's the internal walls that got you there, then that means you could do something about it. You had the previous 15 or 20 years. Now, what's the next 10 going to look like? Figure that out. And then now that's when them financial strategies coming out. Now that max out don't look too bad. Or that 23 or maybe even that 60, right? Or funding 2 accounts, the brokerage and the one at home. That HSA, bad year of medical finances. Oh, no, man, we had them bad medical finances. Oh, wait, for those that got it, not shaming anybody that don't. But for those that got it, if you got it, how come the HSA failed? So forgive yourself, affirm yourself, and then admit to yourself, and then take some action so you can, love yourself later on. That's when I say love yourself, love your household.
That's awesome, man. So listen, the power of representation and financial expertise. Like I said, I applaud you. I see you on TV and you're doing your thing there, and I'm really happy for you. Didn't really know you. Now we have a chance to kind of communicate now, and I feel we know each other now. I'm so proud of you, man, because you're actually a voice of reason. I mean, you're someone that actually is articulate enough for them to bring you on to speak. I usually hear Charles Payne, right? That's usually the guy you hear a lot of, you know what I mean? But now we have you now, right? Why is it so important for people to see people like you?
I'm cognizant every day, Dr. Wallace, of those that have done for me. I'm very cognizant of the shoulders that I stand on and how I got here. Yes, life is about choices and hard work and all that type of stuff. No question, but nobody's self-made. It takes a lot of investment so you can have the tools and the ability and the everything in order to make good choices and put in the hard work. Because everybody's like, oh, it's just about choices or hard work. A lot more, right? That's no topic. But I'm very aware of the sacrifices, particularly starting with my parents that were placed into me, my mentors, friends, support groups, all of that. Me being able to see through a worldview. My parents taught me about a worldview, but they were very aware about seeing and believe it, all that. That's why I went to HBCU right out of the suburbs. I grew up in the suburbs, and then I went back and forth back to my birth town in Kansas City. So I got to see everything. I got to see the hood. I got to see the suburbs. I got to see all walks of life. I got to see all that. So I did have a worldview, but that said, I wanted to connect. That's why I went to the HBCU to see the culture and all that type of stuff. And my mentor was there. One of my first mentors, and seeing him, that was the second stage, Dr. Wallace, from my parents going into the college and having a mentor to say, okay, I got it from here. Let's do it. I'm aware of all of that every day. I know we just got through, February, being Black History Month, all is up. Black history is all type of history. It's world history, American history, all this, right? I happen to be here, Dr. Wallace, because I happen to be Black, not because I am Black. We don't have to go into the room, having to wear the struggle and also the beauty of Blackness. My dad, like I said, I would say, well, one little small girl, you got to unask that, right? So you can, so you can just be you, just live. Like my grandfather said, keep living, son. So to your question directly, everything that I do every day is to represent myself to the God that I define it, my family, the people that brought me here, and the people that are watching to say, I can do that too. And it's very important in everything that I do is to advance the human condition and for specifically of those that need and want examples.
What do you want the listeners to take away from this particular podcast that you're on?
First of all, now these are the rims that you want. All right, everybody. All right, everybody, first you either want some rims or go get you some nice factory jobs, or when you get a luxury car, is get you some wheels on your, get your Dr. Wallace past, present, and future wheel, get you a life balance wheel and put that on your ride, of life. Invest in the areas that are going to bring well-being to you and how success means to you. Wealth or dollars, well-being or domains, align those two so they're dancing in tandem. That's why I say money is a partner, not a tool. Partners are you're engaged, associated with another person or another thing, right? In the course of action, it's a partner. It has a soul. So what I want to leave you here with is use your money to fund the areas that are going to bring you the well-being that you want now and later. And then don't explain it, and then just live aspirationally and live your life.
Final question for you. So you're doing a lot of things right now. How do people get in contact with you, and what else do you have on the horizon? I just seen that you just signed on. You're going to be a financial planner for this one group. I'm kind of speaking to that as well. But, how do people get in contact with you, and what do you got going forward?
I appreciate it. So the handles on all across social media is Dr. Preston Cherry. So Dr. Preston Cherry, Dr. Preston Cherry. That the podcast is Life Money Balance. That's at YouTube under the same handle, Life Money Balance. I have my speaker page is drprestoncherry.com, same thing. And then the wealth management firm, which is Concurrent, FP.com. And right now, just enjoying the firm, enjoying being at the school, teaching young people, working with my clients, being on stage, talking to folks, and hopefully folks are enjoying the book and buying the book. Go out and get the book, y'all.
A lot of people are saying they're buying the book, but my man's saying he's getting the numbers. So make sure you go buy the book,
It's got a good album cover on it, too. It's beautiful.
It's awesome, man. Hey, man, this has been great, man. On behalf of the New Wealth Way podcast, my producer, Ray Hadcraft, I would like to thank Dr. Preston D. Cherry, founder and CEO of Concurrent Wealth Management and director of the financial planning program, UW Green Bay, for taking time out of his busy schedule to come on and really drop some nuggets, have some fun. I mean, this has been something I've been waiting for a long time now. You've been a great, great person to come on, man. I really do appreciate you coming on. And as we always say, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. We'll see you on the next episode of the New Wealth Way podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the New Wealth Way podcast, hosted by Dr. Joaquin Wallace. Our show is edited and produced by Ray Haycraft. To dive deeper into the world of financial wisdom and learn how to create your financial footprints, head to our website at www.drjwallace.com. For more updates and exclusive content, connect with us on social media by searching Dr. Joaquin Wallace. And if you have questions and comments, feel free to email us at thenewwealthwaypodcast@gmail.com. Remember, generational wealth begins with generational knowledge. And as always, thanks for listening. The content presented in this podcast is strictly for educational purposes and should not be taken as investment advice. The views and opinions expressed by our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the New Wealth Way podcast and its host or producers. Listeners are urged to exercise discretion and judgment before making any financial or investment decisions. Always consult with a financial professional or advisor before taking any action based on the content of this podcast. If you're enjoying the New Wealth Way podcast, we appreciate if you leave us a review. We're always open to topic suggestions and guest recommendations. Feel free to reach out to us directly with your thoughts and feedback. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the New Wealth Way podcast.